This report from Cushman & Wakefield, they have this graph here. This is homeownership by age, and it is the three-quarter center moving average. This is how much homeownership has changed since 1994. For instance, in maybe the mid 2000s, the homeownership for young people, it really spiked up really high for the under 35.
Yeah.
And then it went down. Now, my problem there is
because anybody can buy a home.
Well, and also the younger people own less homes, so it's easier for them to move wildly. Yeah. Now, guess what I did? I made my own graph. I made my own graph that doesn't show this change since 1994 and just shows what the rate is each year, because that chart really, again, makes that under 35. So look at the absolute value, much less of a mountain, much more of a molehill, I guess, for the under 35s.
Yeah,
but you can see the inflection point at around the pandemic kind of lockdown period, where housing and home ownership rates really shoot up really quickly, and then they kind of trend down. But you can also see that it is a rolling hill. These trends are over the period of 10 years.
People buy a home and then sell the home right away.
Jay mentioned that same thing. We looked at it in another, and you can actually, the third graph I have up here is the year-over-year household estimates for everyone. So it's kind of on average. You see that huge spike up, spike down, and then it comes back into the middle. What I think about this graph is, just looking at it, you can see that household.
This is what a transient. That's transient right there.
So this basically, I'm using this as a proxy for household formation, because this is household estimates, and I took the percent of change year over year. So basically, throughout this graph right now, the change in year over year household estimates is around 1 to 2, and it seems to change very quickly by each month. Sometimes it's around 1, sometimes it's over like 1.75, but that's basically the range that we're dealing with, is probably 1 to 1.75. And I'm saying that because it was much lower than that in the past 10 years. Like, this is as high as it's been, and I'm excluding that weird spike because that's probably just bad data. They probably just had like one guy reporting it during the pandemic.
Is that, I mean, there was a large growth, and I mean there was a 4% growth, and then the decline was it wasn't even. At first it looked even, but it was really only a 0.7% decline. So you'd think that it would have stayed slightly elevated, but my thought is, like, if we are looking at household estimates as this driver of housing, which Cushman & Wakefield notes here, and Apartment List notes as well, it's like, well, these households are growing at just about the same rate that they've grown since like 1990 almost, and maybe a little bit higher than they were in 1990. But I don't see, and also if we're looking at a general trend, I also don't see it trending downward. I think it's actually trending upward or going to plateau, and it's been higher than this, but it's in a healthy spot. I don't see anything worrying here either. I mean, really, kind of mid 2000s, Matt, there is kind of a trend upward.
Yeah. And that may be, due to previous to that, there was a general low. So from 1985, or maybe a little before then, to kind of 2010, there was a weak declining trend, I would say.
Interesting. There are these, and we're looking at this live, these like 5-year cycles, it almost seems like you can see one very clearly here and here and here, and that's a kind of a big one. But I don't know, if you chunk it up to these almost 5-year household growth cycles, is interesting, which don't necessarily, I'm sure there is some correlation that lines up with the much longer kind of housing market cycle. But
and that may be the reason why we're talking about these things in terms of generations. Maybe there's a generational trends that associated with either home ownership or household formation. What Cushman & Wakefield's point in their article is that it's a very promising situation for apartment rentals, for housing in general. You can really chart a growth, at least for the next 10 years, if not longer, for increased demand, or at least very steady high demand. That's one thing maybe that spike did is push. when we noted this as was happening, kind of pushed forward the demand stayed there. When it dropped down, it went up 4, dropped down 0.6. So
well, and really recently, it's not the demand's fallen off.
Yeah.
I mean, in 2023, a little bit it slowed down. There was uncertainty related to interest rates, but it's much more of just the supply that's come online that has seen vacancy rates increase, occupancy decline, and rent go negative, not demand falling off. And if anything, the research for this year is demand is near kind of all-time highs and is continuing to peak. So.
And I still have spent the last week, if not longer, really the past year, trying to nail down this elusive connection between high interest rates, home buying, and choosing to rent. How many people choose to rent an apartment instead of buy a home because interest rates are high? What's the numeric effect? There's got to be a way to parse the data. I've been, some people have teased it. I think there was someone from CBRE that said that they were working on a report, and I searched furiously for that. Couldn't find it.
It's almost the change in, if anybody's keeping accurate statistics of how you categorize renters by, and I haven't seen these statistics or the demographics parts this way in a while, but renters by choice versus renters by necessity.
Yeah.
And assuming that renters by choice equals someone who can afford to purchase a home, at that income, at the median, home price in that area, but they are choosing to rent an apartment versus someone who may be making a good amount of money, but is a renter by necessity. And when we say renter by necessity, especially prior to the pandemic and interest rates moving, you could think about more of like workforce housing and like a C-class apartment, but a renter by necessity might be a doctor, right out of med school that has a decent salary, but like they don't have enough money for a down payment. Yeah, maybe it's because they just buy like a BMW or something.
Or
but they don't got an option.
Yeah. Well,